My name is Maeve, and I am 36 years old. Right now, I am standing at my husband's company charity gala, wearing my best dress and smiling like the perfect wife. But tonight is not about being the perfect wife anymore. Tonight, I am about to blow up 2 marriages in front of 200 people. I spotted the woman across the room, the one sleeping with my husband. What she does not know is that I found her husband too. He is standing right next to me. Before I tell you how this night unfolded, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. If you believe cheaters should face consequences, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to see their faces when everything fell apart. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the marriage that everyone envied. I met Brandon Callahan at a friend's barbecue when I was 26 years old. I had grown up in a working-class family in Pittsburgh, where my father spent 30 years as a steelworker, and my mother managed the cafeteria at the local elementary school. They taught me the value of hard work and loyalty. They showed me what a real partnership looked like, even when money was tight and life was hard. Brandon was different from any man I had ever met. He was tall with sandy hair and an easy smile that made everyone around him feel comfortable. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, and he had this way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our connection was instant electric, the kind of chemistry that romance novels try to describe, but never quite capture. We dated for 2 years before he proposed during a trip to Savannah. He got down on one knee in the middle of a cobblestone square, tourists stopping to watch, and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. I said yes, without hesitation. I thought I had found my person, my partner, my forever. We married when I was 30 years old. The wedding was beautiful, an outdoor ceremony in a garden venue with white roses everywhere, and our closest friends and family watching us exchange vows. I remember looking into Brandon's eyes and believing every single word he said about loving and cherishing me until death do us part. The first 5 years of our marriage felt like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. We bought a house in suburban Philadelphia, a charming colonial with a wraparound porch and a backyard perfect for the children we planned to have. I worked as an elementary school librarian, a job I absolutely loved. There is something magical about putting the right book in the right child's hands at the right moment. Brandon's career took off during those years. He got promoted to regional director, and suddenly he was making more money than either of us had ever imagined possible. We went on vacations to places I had only seen in magazines. We ate at restaurants where the bill for dinner could have covered my parents' grocery budget for a month. We tried for children, and that is where our perfect life hit its first real obstacle. I had 2 miscarriages, both devastating in different ways. The first one happened at 11 weeks. The second one happened at 14 weeks, after we had already started telling people, after we had already picked out names. Brandon held me while I cried for days. He took time off work to be with me. He said all the right thing about how we would get through this together. Eventually, we decided to stop trying. The emotional toll was too much, and we made peace with the idea that our family would be just the two of us. I told myself that was enough. I told myself we had each other, and that was what mattered most. Life was not perfect, but it was good. It was stable. It was loving. At least that is what I believed. Around year 6, things started shifting in ways I could not quite name. Brandon began traveling more for work. He would leave on Monday morning and not come back until Thursday night, sometimes Friday. When he was home, he seemed distracted. His phone was always in his hand, and he would angle it away from me when he typed. Late nights at the office became routine. He would text me around 6 in the evening saying he had to stay late, that there was a crisis with a client, that he would be home by 10. Then 10 became 11. Then 11 became midnight. I noticed all of this, but I rationalized it. His job was demanding. He was working hard for our future. He was building something for us. When I mentioned that I missed him, that I felt like we were becoming roommates instead of partners, he got defensive. Do you know what he said to me? He said, "I am doing this for us, Maeve. Cannot you appreciate that?" So I backed off. I did not want to be the nagging wife. I did not want to be the woman who could not support her husband's ambition. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, ungrateful. Year 7 brought more changes. Brandon started going to the gym obsessively. He had never cared much about fitness before, but suddenly he was there every morning at 5, coming home with protein shakes and talking about his gains. He bought new cologne expensive stuff that smelled nothing like the man I married. He started watching what he ate, turning down my cooking for salads and grilled chicken. Friends started commenting on how great he looked. "What is Brandon's secret?" they would ask. I would smile and say I did not know, but somewhere deep inside I suspected. I just could not bring myself to face what that suspicion meant. The moment everything changed happened 8 months ago on an ordinary Tuesday evening that would turn out to be anything but ordinary. Brandon was in the shower. His phone was on the nightstand, and it buzzed with a new message. I glanced over without thinking, the way you do when you have been married to someone for a decade, and privacy has become a fluid concept. The message preview stopped my heart. It said, "Last night was incredible. Cannot stop thinking about your hands on me." There was no name saved, just a phone number. My blood went cold. My hands started shaking. I wanted to grab that phone storm into the bathroom and demand answers. I wanted to scream and cry and make him tell me everything. But something held me back. Some survival instinct kicked in and told me that if I confronted him now, he would lie. He would delete everything. He would cover his tracks and make me feel crazy for asking. He'd gotten good at that over the years. I needed to know everything first. I needed to know who this woman was. I needed to know how long this had been going on. I needed to know if this was one terrible mistake or a pattern of betrayal. So I made a split-second decision that would change everything. I decided to say nothing. I decided to investigate everything. Brandon came out of the shower a few minutes later, towel around his waist, steam following him into the bedroom. He looked at me sitting on the bed with my book and asked if everything was okay. I smiled at him. I told him I was fine, just tired. That was the last night I slept soundly, but it was the first night I started fighting back. The investigation began immediately. I spent the first week observing Brandon like he was a stranger, which I suppose he was. I noted every pattern, every habit, every inconsistency. His work trips always fell on specific weekdays. Thursday nights were always client dinners that ran until midnight. He always showered the moment he walked through the door, even if he claimed to have come straight from the office. I started paying closer attention to our credit card statements. Brandon had always handled the finances, and I had let him because it seemed easier. Now I realized how foolish that had been. I found charges at restaurants we had never been to together. Romantic Italian places and trendy wine bars. There were hotel charges in the city, which made no sense when he had a perfectly good office downtown. And there was a jewelry purchase for $800 that I had definitely never received. Each discovery was a knife sliding between my ribs. But I kept documenting. I created a secret folder on my laptop and filled it with dates, amounts, and locations. I memorized the phone number from that text message, but did not call it yet. I needed more information before I made my next move. One afternoon, while Brandon was traveling, I searched his home office. He kept a desk drawer locked, but the key was hidden in a coffee mug on the shelf, because Brandon was never as clever as he thought he was. Inside the drawer, I found receipts he had not expensed to the company, romantic dinners for two, flowers delivered to an address I did not recognize. a receipt for a weekend getaway at a bed and breakfast in Cape May. That one hurt the most. He had told me that weekend was a conference. Mandatory, he said. No spouses allowed. I had spent that weekend alone catching up on laundry and watching movies by myself while he was with another woman in a cozy room by the ocean. I realized I needed professional help. This was bigger than I could handle alone. I found a private investigator through a discreet online search. His name was Frank Malone, a former police detective in his 60s, with a no-nonsense approach and a face that had seen everything. We met at a coffee shop across town, and I paid in cash, so nothing would show up on our shared accounts. I explained the situation and showed him my evidence. Frank nodded slowly as he looked through my documentation. He said, "Unfortunately, this is textbook. The patterns are clear." Then he asked me a question that caught me off guard. He asked if I wanted to know who she was, or just confirm the affair. I told him I wanted to know everything. Her name, her life, her circumstances. And if she was married, I wanted to know that too. Frank raised an eyebrow at that. He said most wives do not ask for that information. I told him I was not most wives. Frank agreed to take the case. The retainer was $1,000. I had a small inheritance from my grandmother that Brandon did not know about money I had kept in a separate account, because some part of me had always been more cautious than I realized. That was the first smart secret I ever kept from him. Frank would follow Brandon, document his meetings, and identify the woman. He estimated 2 to 3 weeks for a full report. Those were the longest weeks of my life. Every single day, I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to kiss Brandon goodbye in the morning and ask about his day when he came home. I had to lie next to him at night, knowing he was lying to me about everything. I became an actress in my own marriage, and I discovered I was better at it than I ever wanted to be. 3 weeks later, Frank called and said he had everything. He said we needed to meet. I drove to the same coffee shop with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Frank was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a manila folder on the table between us. He slid the folder across to me and said, "It is all in there." Inside were photographs, a detailed timeline, and a complete identity profile. The woman's name was Brooke Patterson. She was 33 years old and worked at a marketing firm that contracted with Brandon's company. That was how they met 18 months ago at a conference in Chicago. 18 months. Not 8 months like I had thought. 14 months of active affair, plus 4 months of whatever came before it became physical. The photos showed everything. Brandon and Brooke at restaurants, leaning close together. Brandon and Brooke entering hotels, his hand on the small of her back. Brandon and Brooke on that weekend in Cape May, walking on the beach like a couple without a care in the world. Brooke was attractive in that polished professional way. Blonde highlights, tailored clothes, confident smile. She looked like someone who knew what she wanted and had no problem taking it, even if it belonged to someone else. But here was the detail that mattered most, the one that changed everything. Brooke Patterson was married. Her husband's name was Derek Patterson. He was 38 years old and owned a contracting business. They had been married for 5 years and had no children. Frank told me the husband seemed completely unaware. He traveled a lot for work himself, which gave Brooke plenty of cover for her affair. I stared at the photos for a long time. This woman was betraying her own husband exactly the way Brandon was betraying me. 2 liars who found each other. 2 cheaters who thought they were clever enough to have it all without consequences. And there were 2 innocent spouses being played for fools. I asked Frank if he could get me contact information for the husband. Frank hesitated. He said that was unusual and asked what I was planning. I told him I was planning to stop being the only one who knows the truth. Frank provided Derek Patterson's work email and phone number. I paid the final bill, thanked him for his thorough work, and took the folder. I walked to my car and sat there for an hour. Not crying, not screaming, just thinking, planning, deciding what kind of woman I wanted to be in this situation. I spent 2 days thinking about how to approach Derek Patterson. I could confront Brandon directly with the evidence. I had more than enough proof to make my case. But I knew exactly what would happen. He would apologize, make excuses, cry crocodile tears. He might even turn it around on me, somehow blame his affair on my coldness, or my nagging, or whatever convenient excuse he could manufacture. Brandon was good at making himself the victim. I could file for divorce quietly, take my evidence to a lawyer, get my fair share of everything, and walk away with my dignity intact. But that approach meant Brooke would face no consequences. She would just move on to her next victim, maybe another married man at another conference, and her husband would never know what kind of woman he was married to. I could send an anonymous tip to Derek, a letter or an email with just enough information to make him suspicious. But that felt cowardly and incomplete. It was too easy for him to dismiss, too easy for Brooke to explain away. No. I wanted justice, not just escape. I wanted the affair partners to face their spouses together at the same time in the same place. I wanted them to see the destruction they had caused reflected in each other's eyes. I wanted them to understand that their secret was not a secret anymore, and never would be again. So I decided to contact Derek directly. Honestly. I would tell him everything, show him the evidence, and see if he wanted to join me in confrontation. The risk was real. He might not believe me. He might warn his wife. He might think I was some crazy woman trying to cause trouble. But I trusted my instincts about people. Derek deserved to know the truth, just like I had deserved to know. I composed the email, carefully rewriting it a dozen times before I was satisfied. The subject line said, "Important information about your wife. Please read." The body said, Mr. Patterson. My name is Maeve Callahan. I am married to Brandon Callahan, and I have reason to believe your wife and my husband have been having an affair for over a year. I have documented evidence, including photographs, receipts, and a professional investigation report. I understand this is shocking, and you have no reason to trust a stranger. But I am asking for one meeting to show you what I have discovered. You deserve to know the truth, and so did I when I found out. If I am wrong, I will apologize and never contact you again. But I do not think I am wrong. Please call me if you are willing to meet. I included my phone number at the bottom. Then I closed my eyes, said a small prayer to whoever might be listening, and hit send. The waiting was agony. I checked my phone every 5 minutes for 2 days straight. Every time it buzzed, my heart jumped. Every time it was just a notification or a spam call, I felt the disappointment like a physical weight. By the 3rd day, I had started to accept that he was not going to respond. Maybe he thought I was crazy. Maybe he showed the email to Brooke, and they were laughing about the paranoid wife who could not accept that her marriage was over. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. A deep voice said, "Is this Maeve?" I confirmed that it was and asked if I was speaking to Derek. He said, "I got your email." I do not know what to think. I told him I understood. I asked if we could meet. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel him wrestling with himself about whether to trust me or hang up. Finally, he said, "Tomorrow, noon. Tell me where." We met at a park that was halfway between our homes, neutral territory in a public space where neither of us had reason to feel unsafe. Derek arrived first. I spotted him on a bench near the fountain, and he looked exactly like someone whose world was about to collapse, but did not know it yet. He was tall, with dark hair, wearing work boots and a flannel shirt. Clearly, he had come straight from a job site. His face was guarded, wary, but there was also hope in his eyes. Hope that I was wrong. Hope that this was all a misunderstanding. I recognized that hope because I had felt it myself. That desperate clinging to the possibility that your spouse is not the person you fear they have become. I sat down on the bench next to him and handed over the folder without preamble. I told him I was sorry to be the one showing him this. Derek opened the folder slowly, like he was afraid of what he might find inside. I watched his face as he processed what he was seeing. His wife with another man, kissing in a car, holding hands across a restaurant table, walking into a hotel room together. Derek's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. His hands gripped the papers hard enough to crinkle the edges. He asked how long. I told him 14 months, according to my investigator. He repeated the words. 14 months. His voice sounded hollow, emptied out. He kept looking at the photos, his face cycling through emotions I knew all too well. Disbelief came first, then pain, then rage, then something harder and colder. He told me he had suspected something, but he told himself he was being paranoid. She always had explanations for everything. She always made him feel crazy for asking questions. I told him they were good at that. Derek asked what I intended to do with this information. I told him I wanted to confront them together, at the same time, in the same place. I wanted them to see that both spouses knew the truth. I wanted them to face what they had done to both families. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he told me something his grandfather used to say. When he built his business, his grandfather believed that if a man cheats you, you expose him to the community, so others do not get cheated too. Derek said he always thought that was harsh. Now he understood. He agreed to work with me. We would find the right moment, the right place, somewhere both Brandon and Brooke would be. That was when I remembered the gala. Brandon's company was hosting a charity event in 3 weeks, a black tie affair at one of the nicest hotels in Philadelphia. Brooke's marketing firm was sponsoring it, which meant she would definitely be there. Both of them in the same room, surrounded by colleagues and acquaintances. It was the perfect opportunity. Derek said he would get tickets. He could say his contracting company wanted to make a donation to the charity. I told him I was already going as Brandon's wife. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to coordinate every detail. The meeting ended with a handshake. Two strangers bonded by the worst kind of shared experience, united in our pursuit of truth. The 3 weeks before the gala were torture. Every day I had to pretend with Brandon. Every touch made my skin crawl. Every time he said he loved me, I wanted to ask him which version of love included lying to my face for over a year. But I played my part perfectly. I cooked his favorite dinners. I asked about his day with genuine-sounding interest. I smiled when he talked about the upcoming gala. He told me it was going to be a big night. The CEO was announcing an expansion. Major donors would be there. It was important for his career that everything went smoothly. I nodded along and said I did not mind going. I told him I liked supporting his career. Brandon actually looked touched, maybe even a little guilty. He said I was too good to him. I wanted to scream the truth in his face. I wanted to tell him he had no idea how right he was about that. Instead, I kissed his cheek and told him that was what wives were for. Late at night, while he snored beside me in our bed, I would slip into the bathroom and text Derek updates. We became unexpected confidants over those weeks. Two people processing the same betrayal from different angles. Derek shared that Brooke was being extra affectionate lately. Probably guilt, he figured. She had bought him a new watch the week before. Expensive. Engraved with their wedding date. He told me he wanted to throw it at her head. I understood that feeling completely. Brandon had brought me flowers twice in those 3 weeks. Each bouquet felt less like a gift and more like an insult. Derek did his own investigation after our meeting. He checked credit card statements and phone records. He found text messages Brooke thought she had deleted. They were not actually deleted, just hidden. He sent me screenshots, explicit messages between his wife and my husband, love declarations and inside jokes and plans for their next rendezvous. One message from Brooke to Brandon said, "You are the only one who understands me. Derek does not appreciate me like you do." Derek was gutted by that one. His wife called him unappreciative while he worked 60 hours a week building their future, while he poured everything into their life together, while she was pouring herself into another man's arms. His hurt turned to cold anger over those weeks, the same journey I had taken. We were walking the same path, just a few steps apart. He texted me one night and said he wanted them to hurt like we hurt. I texted back that they would, when it all came out publicly, when they had to face everyone knowing what they did. The week before the gala, I bought a new dress. Red, elegant, confident. Not the safe beige or navy I usually wore to these events. I wanted to look strong when everything came crashing down around them. I got my hair done. I got my nails done. I took care of myself in ways I had neglected for years. Brandon noticed the transformation. He asked what the occasion was. I told him I just wanted to make him proud at the gala. He kissed my forehead and said I always made him proud. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, so automatic. I wondered how many times he had kissed me like that after coming straight from her. How many times he had said those words with her taste still in his mouth. Derek secured 2 tickets to the gala. He would bring a friend as his cover, someone named Marcus, who was an old college buddy. Marcus knew the situation and agreed to help. He would stay near the exit in case things got heated and we needed backup. Derek and I finalized our plan down to the smallest detail. He would approach his wife during the cocktail hour and ask to introduce her to someone. He would lead her to where I would be standing with Brandon. Then he would say, "Honey, I want you to meet Maeve Callahan and her husband Brandon," and we would watch the realization dawn on their faces. The moment when both cheaters understood that both spouses knew everything. The night before the gala, I could not sleep. I sat in the living room at 2 a.m, looking around at the house Brandon and I had built together. The furniture we picked out during that first exciting year. The photos on the walls from vacations and holidays. 10 years of memories, now tainted by 14 months of lies. I felt grief for the marriage I thought I had. That marriage never actually existed. It was a performance I had believed was real while he was playing a completely different role behind my back. Brandon came downstairs and found me sitting in the dark. He asked what was wrong. I told him I was just thinking about how much our lives had changed over the years. He sat beside me and took my hand. He said we had built something good together. He said whatever challenges came, we would face them as a team. The irony was suffocating. He genuinely thought he was comforting me when he was the reason for my tears. I told him to get some sleep. I reminded him it was a big day tomorrow. He went back to bed without another word. I stayed up until dawn, watching the sun rise on my old life. By this time tomorrow, everything would be different. Everything would finally be true. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of a historic Philadelphia hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. A live orchestra played elegant music in the corner. Waiters in black ties circulated with trays of champagne and canapes. 200 guests filled the space, all of them dressed in their finest. The men wore tailored suits, the women sparkled with jewelry and designer gowns. It was the kind of event that made you feel like you had stepped into a different world, one where everyone was beautiful and successful and nothing bad ever happened. Brandon was in his element. He worked the room like he was born to do it. shaking hands and laughing at jokes and charming everyone he spoke to. The perfect executive, beloved by colleagues, respected by superiors, admired by subordinates. I stayed on his arm, like the perfect wife, smiling graciously at everyone who approached us. But my eyes were constantly scanning the room, searching for Brooke Patterson. I spotted her across the ballroom about 20 minutes after we arrived. She was wearing a blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Diamond earrings caught the light every time she moved. She was standing with a group from her marketing firm laughing at something someone said. Then she glanced toward Brandon. Just a quick look, barely perceptible unless you were watching for it. A small, secretive smile crossed her face. Brandon did not look back at her. He was too smart for that. But I noticed the slight shift in his posture, the way his body angled almost imperceptibly in her direction. He knew exactly where his mistress was. He had probably been counting the minutes until he could slip away and find her. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. It said, "I am here, by the bar. Do you see her?" I texted back, "Yes, blue dress. Let us wait until after cocktail hour. More people watching during the main event." Derek replied, "Copy. Standing by." The waiting was excruciating. I watched Brandon perform his devoted husband act for the crowd. I watched Brooke play the role of professional colleague, never once acknowledging the man she had been sleeping with for over a year. Two actors in a play that only Derek and I could see through. During the cocktail hour, Brandon excused himself to talk to a client. I watched him walk toward the bar, passing within a few feet of Brooke. They did not acknowledge each other openly, but I saw the brush of hands as they passed, barely perceptible, a signal between conspirators. Later. Meet me later. My rage solidified into something cold and sharp. I walked to where Derek was standing near the bar. It was the first time I had seen him since that day in the park. He looked different in a suit, cleaned up, dignified. But the pain was still visible in his eyes, held in check by sheer force of will. I asked if he was okay. He said no, but he said he was ready. He told me he had watched his wife light up when Brandon walked by, like a teenager with a crush. It made him sick. We stood together in that crowded room, two wounded spouses united by betrayal. I told him we would wait until after the CEO's speech when everyone was mingling. More witnesses, more impact. Derek said he wanted her to remember this night forever. He said every time she went to a gala after this, she would think about what happened tonight. I told him they both would. The CEO took the stage around 8:30 to make his announcements. I barely heard a word he said. My heart was pounding so loud, I was surprised the people around me could not hear it. When the speech ended, applause filled the room. Dinner service would begin in about 20 minutes. This was peak mingling time when everyone was moving around and socializing. This was our moment. Brandon was near the stage talking to a group of senior executives. Brooke was with her own colleagues near the windows on the far side of the room. They were as far apart as they could be while still being in the same space. I approached Brandon and touched his arm. I told him I wanted to introduce him to someone, a potential donor who wanted to meet him specifically. Brandon's ego lit up exactly like I knew it would. He said of course, and asked who it was. I told him to follow me. Meanwhile, Derek was approaching Brooke. I could see him across the room, touching her elbow, leaning in to speak to her. She looked confused at first. She did not know Derek knew anyone at this event, but she followed him when he started walking toward the center of the room. Both couples converging. 200 oblivious witnesses. The moment of truth approaching with every step. I guided Brandon forward. Derek guided Brooke forward. We met in the middle of the ballroom, the four of us forming a small circle surrounded by champagne and chandeliers, and people who had no idea what was about to happen. I spoke first. My voice was clear and calm, despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I said, Brandon, I would like you to meet Derek Patterson. Derek is Brooke's husband. I watched my husband's face transform in real time. First there was confusion, then recognition, then pure terror. His eyes darted to Brooke, searching for explanation, for rescue, for anything. Brooke had gone completely pale. She was staring at Derek with her mouth hanging open, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. Derek spoke next. He said, Brooke, this is Maeve Callahan. Maeve is Brandon's wife, the woman whose husband you have been sleeping with for 14 months. Brooke's voice came out strangled. She said Derek's name and started to say she could explain. Derek held up his hand to stop her. He said there was nothing to explain. He had seen the texts, the photos, the hotel receipts, everything. Brandon tried to take control of the situation like he always did. He said we should talk about this privately. He reached for my arm. I stepped back from his touch. I told him no. I told him we were done doing things on his terms. My voice got stronger as I continued. I told him he had lied to me for over a year, in our home, in our bed. He made me think I was paranoid when I asked questions. He gaslit me into silence while he carried on with this woman. I was speaking loudly enough now that nearby guests were starting to turn and stare. The music from the orchestra seemed to fade as people sensed drama unfolding. Brandon's professional mask was cracking. He said my name in that pleading tone he used when he wanted me to drop something. He said, "Not here." I asked him why not here. I reminded him he had brought her here, to his company gala, while I stood next to him like a fool. I asked him if he knew how many times I watched him touch her hand tonight. I told him I saw everything. Derek turned to Brooke. He told her they had been married for 5 years. He said he worked overtime to give her the life she wanted, and she repaid him with this. Brooke started crying. She said it was not supposed to happen. She said they just connected and could not help it. I actually laughed at that. I asked her if she could not help it for 14 months. I told her that was not a mistake. That was a choice, every single day for over a year. By now, guests were openly staring. Whispers were spreading through the room like wildfire. I could see Brandon's boss walking toward us with a concerned expression on his face. Brandon's face flushed red with humiliation. His carefully constructed professional image was crumbling in real time right in front of the people whose respect he needed most. Brooke was looking around desperately for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. Everyone had seen. Everyone had heard. The perfect secret that had protected them for so long was shattered beyond repair. Derek reached up and removed his wedding ring. He placed it in Brooke's trembling hand and told her they were done. He said his lawyer would contact her tomorrow. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. I looked at Brandon one last time. I told him I would be at the house collecting my things. I told him not to come home tonight. Or ever. I took my own ring off slowly, deliberately. I wanted him to see every second of it. I placed it on the nearest table with a soft click that seemed to echo through the silent room. Then I walked through the crowd toward the exit, head high, shoulders back, not looking back once. The whispers following me felt like applause. I drove home in a strange state of calm. The adrenaline was wearing off slowly, leaving something quieter in its wake. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, but my mind was clear for the first time in months. What I had just done was irreversible. By morning, everyone in Brandon's industry would know what kind of man he really was. His carefully built reputation would be in ruins, his career would be damaged, his image would be destroyed. Good. I arrived home and started packing my essentials: clothes, important documents, my grandmother's jewelry, the few things that actually mattered to me. The house felt alien now, like it had never really been mine, and I suppose it never was. It was always Brandon's house that he let me live in, his life that he allowed me to be part of. I had been a supporting character in his story, not the lead in my own. My phone would not stop buzzing. Brandon was calling and texting in rotation. Please let me explain. Do not do anything rash. I love you. This was a mistake. I blocked his number without reading another word. Nothing he could say mattered anymore. No explanation could undo 14 months of deliberate deception. No apology could restore what he had broken. Derek texted me around midnight. He said he had done the same thing, packed a bag and went to his brother's house. He asked how I was holding up. I told him I felt weirdly calm, like I had finally done something right after months of feeling powerless. He said the same thing was true for him. The relief was almost strange, like carrying a weight you did not know was crushing you. We agreed to meet for coffee the next day, to debrief plan. Next steps, support each other through whatever came next. I checked into a hotel that night, a nice one. I used the credit card that was about to be cancelled and charged the most expensive room they had. It was the first night I had slept alone in 10 years. I slept better than I had in months. The next few days were chaos, but it was the good kind. The kind that meant things were finally changing. Brandon's company initiated an internal review of his conduct. Turns out, having an affair with someone from a contracted vendor violated the company ethics policy. His relationship with Brooke was not just personal betrayal, but professional misconduct. He was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His boss, the same man I had seen walking toward us at the gala, was apparently furious about the public embarrassment. Brooke faced consequences at her firm too. The senior partners questioned her judgment and professionalism. She was removed from the pharmaceutical company account and essentially demoted without anyone calling it a demotion. I heard all of this through mutual friends, the ones who were willing to talk to me. The schadenfreude was real, and I did not feel guilty about it for a second. Brandon tried to reach me through those friends. He begged them to convince me to talk to him. He said he could explain everything if I would just give him a chance. Most of them politely declined to get involved. Some took my side openly. One of his oldest friends told him, "Honestly, Brandon, you brought this on yourself. Nobody wanted to be seen defending a cheater who had been caught so publicly." Derek reported similar fallout on his end. Brooke's family was horrified when they found out what she had done. Her mother actually called Derek to apologize. She told him she raised her daughter better than this. She said she was so sorry. Derek appreciated the gesture, but his focus was on the divorce. Both of us were heading toward dissolution now. Both cheaters were facing consequences they never anticipated. The secrecy that had protected their affair was gone. And without that secrecy, their relationship looked exactly as ugly and small as it really was. I filed for divorce within the week. I hired a sharp attorney named Gloria Reyes, a 52-year-old woman with a fierce reputation and no patience for cheating husbands. Gloria reviewed my evidence folder with raised eyebrows. She told me I had documented everything perfectly. She said most people confront in anger and lose all their leverage. I had waited, gathered proof, and exposed them strategically. She said she was impressed. I told her I wanted Brandon to face real consequences, not just a private argument he could spin his way out of. Gloria smiled and said, "Mission accomplished." Then she said we needed to get me what I deserved. Pennsylvania was an equitable distribution state, which meant I was entitled to a fair share of all marital assets. The house, the retirement accounts, the investments. Everything we had built together, even though he had tried to make me feel like none of it was mine. Brandon initially tried to fight the divorce. His lawyer claimed I had ambushed him publicly and damaged his reputation deliberately. Gloria shut that down fast. She pointed out that Brandon's 14-month affair was thoroughly documented. Judges did not look kindly on that. We could settle reasonably, or we could drag this out publicly. His choice. Brandon's lawyer advised him to settle. More public fighting would only hurt his career further. The negotiations took 3 months. In the end, I received the house which I planned to sell because I did not want to live there anymore. I got 60% of the retirement funds, and I got a lump sum settlement for emotional damages. Total value approximately $750,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start over. Enough to build a new life on my own terms. Brandon signed the papers with barely concealed resentment. I felt nothing but relief. Derek's divorce finalized around the same time. Brooke tried to reconcile at first. She cried and begged and promised to change. Derek stayed strong. He told her she had chosen to lie for 14 months. That was not a moment of weakness. That was who she was. Brooke got the house. Derek did not want it. He kept his business and most of the liquid assets. They had no children, so the break was clean financially. Derek and I continued meeting for coffee through those months, our support group of 2. We understood each other's anger and grief in a way nobody else could. His brother tried to help, but did not quite get it. He told Derek at least he found out before they had kids. True, but dismissive of the pain. My aunt said something similar. She told me men do this. She said it was nothing personal. It was absolutely personal, actually. Only Derek understood the specific betrayal of being made to feel crazy while the truth was right in front of you. Of being told I love you by someone who was actively deceiving you every single day. That shared understanding became the foundation of a real friendship. Not romantic, not a rebound. Just 2 people who helped each other survive. 1 year after the gala, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment and watched the sun rise over the city. My life looked completely different than it had 12 months before. I had sold the house in the suburbs and used the money to buy a small apartment in the city. It was a fraction of the size of my old home, but every square foot of it was mine. I decorated exactly the way I wanted. Bright colors, plants everywhere. Art that I chose because I loved it, not because it matched some aesthetic Brandon preferred. I returned to my job at the library with a new sense of purpose. My colleagues knew what had happened, though they were kind enough not to bring it up directly. The principal told me to ask if I needed anything. I threw myself into creating new programs for the students, an after-school reading club for kids who were struggling, a summer literacy camp in partnership with local shelters. Work became fulfilling again. Not just something I did to fill the hours between Brandon's trips. I had neglected my own interests during my marriage. I was always accommodating his schedule, his preferences, his needs. Now I took pottery classes on Saturday mornings. I joined a hiking group that explored trails all over Pennsylvania. I reconnected with college friends I had let slip away. My friend Sandra told me I seemed more like myself than I had in years. She said losing Brandon was terrible, but I was thriving. I told her I lost a cheater and found myself. Not exactly a fair trade, but I would take it. 6 months after the gala, something shifted inside me. The anger that had been my constant companion started to fade. The obsessive replay of Brandon's betrayal slowed down. I could go entire days without thinking about him. When I did think about him, it was with detachment, like remembering a movie I watched a long time ago, not a personal wound that still bled. I started seeing a therapist. We worked through things I had not even realized were affecting me. Why I ignored the red flags with Brandon. why I minimized my own needs for so long. The therapist helped me see patterns that went back to childhood. My father was emotionally unavailable. My mother was always accommodating his moods, his silences, his absences. I had repeated the same dynamic in my marriage without even realizing it. Understanding that did not excuse Brandon, but it helped me heal. It helped me understand why I stayed so long when some part of me always knew something was wrong. I learned to trust my instincts again. The gut feeling that told me something was off had been right all along. I had just been trained to dismiss it, to doubt myself, to believe my perception was flawed. Never again would I silence my own intuition for anyone. Derek went through a similar process. His therapist helped him work through trust issues. We compared notes, sometimes laughed about our homework assignments. He told me his therapist said he needed to feel his feelings. I told him mine said the same thing. Apparently, I intellectualized too much. We joked that we had so much in common besides cheating spouses. Dark humor helped us both. A year after the gala, I heard updates through the grapevine about Brandon and Brooke. Brandon left his company eventually, moved to another state to escape the damaged reputation. Last I heard, he was working at a smaller firm in a lower position. Brooke was still in Philadelphia, but keeping a low profile. Her career had recovered somewhat, but she would never regain the status she had before. And here was the detail that gave me more satisfaction than anything else: they were not together anymore. The affair that destroyed 2 marriages did not even survive the exposure. Without the thrill of secrecy, without the excitement of doing something forbidden, their relationship apparently lost its appeal. They had nothing real to build on, just lies and lust and the destruction they left behind. A fitting end for a love story built entirely on betrayal. Derek was doing well. He had started dating someone new, a woman named Julia who was an elementary school teacher. He told me she was kind and honest and boring in the best possible way. He had learned to appreciate boring after the drama of Brooke. I was not dating yet. I did not feel the need. For the first time in my adult life, I was enjoying my own company, learning who I was outside of a relationship. Maybe someday I would be ready for someone new. But there was no rush. I thought about the lessons this past year had taught me. Trust your instincts, even when others tell you that you are wrong. I felt something was off for over a year. Brandon made me think I was paranoid, insecure, crazy. But my gut knew. It always knew. Never let anyone convince you that your perception is flawed just because the truth is inconvenient for them. Confrontation does not have to be destructive to be powerful. I planned carefully. I gathered evidence. I found an ally. When I finally confronted Brandon, I was not screaming or crying. I was calm, prepared, and in complete control. That is why he could not spin it or manipulate the narrative. Strategic confrontation changes the power dynamic. Betrayed people have more power than they realize. I thought I was a victim with no options, but I had choices. How to respond. When to respond. Whether to respond at all. Choosing to expose them publicly was my choice. Taking control of the story was my choice. Healing on my own timeline was my choice. I was never as powerless as I felt. Community matters more than you think. After the gala, I found out who my real friends were. Some disappeared, some judged, but many showed up in ways I never expected. My co-workers, my hiking group, my old college friends. They carried me when I could not carry myself. Never underestimate the power of people who genuinely care about you. Forgiveness is not required for healing. People say you have to forgive to move on. I disagree. I do not forgive Brandon. I do not forgive Brooke. What they did was wrong, and they knew it was wrong every single day they chose to continue. But I have released them from my daily thoughts. Indifference is its own kind of freedom. I do not wish them harm, but I do not wish them well either. They simply do not matter to me anymore, and that is enough. I stood on my balcony and looked at my reflection in the window. I saw a woman I was proud of, stronger than before, wiser than before, more authentic than I had ever been. The gala was an ending and a beginning. I exposed two cheaters, but I also exposed my own capacity for courage. That courage did not come from anger alone. It came from deciding I deserved better, from refusing to be collateral damage in someone else's bad choices, from finding an ally in Derek and realizing that betrayed spouses have power when they work together. If you ever discover your partner is cheating, remember that you have more options than you think. You can scream, you can cry, you can confront immediately, or you can pause, plan, and choose your moment. I chose a gala with 200 witnesses, not because I needed an audience for my pain, but because I wanted them to face theirs. The look on their faces when they realized we both knew everything. That moment changed everything. Not just for them, for me. It was the moment I stopped being a victim and started being someone who fights back, on her own terms, in her own time, with her head held high. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a betrayal and had to decide how to respond? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you want to see more stories about strength, courage, and standing up for yourself, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. That betrayal does not have to break them, that there is life and even happiness on the other side. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I wish you strength if you are going through something hard right now. I wish you peace if you are healing from old wounds. And I wish you the courage to always trust yourself no matter what anyone else tries to make you believe. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.